Hey there folks and friends, Connecting Dots here. It's Sunday, March 16, 2014, Fukushima Day 1101, or 157 weeks and 2 days into this disaster. Now, fresh off the press here in Japan, they're upgrading the food detectors, the radiation detectors for the food. Now, I've been mentioning here how I'm asking for donations because I want to start doing my own testing here on the West Coast. Now, I've also said that if you can't afford to send donations, that's great, because that's not my main cause here for being on YouTube and making videos. I think it's pretty obvious. I have a long track record here of presenting information without asking for any money, and I don't have any Google ads. And the point of my videos was to either ask for donations or either get you to fill out a special request here asking the Canadian government to check the food on the West Coast. You'll see by the end of this video it's pretty evident the radiation's been here all along. They're now just finding it here on the West Coast. I'll share a recent story, and it's sad here because boy oh boy, it's so sad that these folks have been downplaying it all along. So at least if you don't want to send a donation, that's fine. Listen, that's no problem. I realize many of us are on tight budget, and that includes myself here, but at least take the time and fill out the request asking the Canadian government to test the food on the West Coast. That's all I'm asking. I'll leave the link down below. It's called the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Okay, now moving along here, this story here was, like I said, out of Japan. They're upgrading the detectors. They already have 530 conventional radiation detectors at 59 municipalities, and they say that in the last 10 months up until January here, there was 126,626 food tests done. Now, they complained here that they were too hard to use. Apparently the detectors required them, the tester, to cut up the food portions into 500 grams, and then it would take a half an hour to get the results. Well, apparently the new one, there's no slicing, there's no dicing. I'll make a story when I actually get a link to this new tester, because I haven't found it yet. Now, if you're wondering, should we be doing it on the West Coast? Heck, folks, come on. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this, or maybe you're just new, because that's a possibility. I mentioned before, the awakening process doesn't just happen to occur overnight. Not everyone's at the same point. If you haven't realized Fukushima's on your doorstep, you will by now. The problem is there's nobody testing. That's why I bought those 2 Geiger counters in 2011 and started doing my own cross-Canada radiation tour. And you may recall I got the high readings where I started picking it up in Hope, BC, and the big one was where? Banff, Lake Louise. Do you remember that? I'll show you here. There's a reason why when I was up in those Cascade Mountains, this is where it's been dumped. And this is why I was asking Dutch Sense when he was doing his when he was going across the U.S. with his Geiger counters. I said, forget about doing background radiation, because you have nothing to back up what the norm was before you got there. So he has no past history on that location, so it's absolutely useless to go around checking background radiation. And I was telling him, Dutch, you need to test the rain. It's in the fallout, it's carried in the jet stream, yada yada yada. Many of us posted that the same comment on his videos, and many of you got blocked, including myself. And now it's all coming to light here, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to stick with common sense here, what I've been spreading since the very beginning of this disaster. And now, many of you may recall this November 1st, 2011 story here that came out where they're comparing the recent samples picked up by Marco Caltofan here from Massachusetts, and he was comparing his samples versus the University of UC Berkeley. Now, they found it also. So we do have a university here that found it, and then he went out on his own and did other testing, and turns out, he found his levels were 108 times greater than the findings by University of Berkeley. Now, I'm not surprised by that, but nonetheless, they admitted they found it, he found it, and it's not like they went out and did a whole lot of testing. You have to understand here, this is new to it, and they weren't sure where it was going to go. So regardless, we found out later on that a lot of the radiation got caught up in this Cascade Mountain chain. And that's important, because it is one of the things I said to Dutch too, like it's going to be up in the air, high up. And as it crossed the Cascade Mountain chain, this is why it got caught up in the mountain chain, and now we have it leaking down into our cities and our streams, and I'll show you that with this recent story. So now I'm not going to stick with this Arnie Gunderson. I think I've showed before here that this guy minimizes, and this whole story of telling folks to go in and wash their shoes is ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying he's a liar all the time, because you won't get very far if you're spreading nothing but lies, right? So there is absolutely some truth into what he spreads. He has to take real information and spread it across, or else he's not going to look like a leading expert. Now, we all know now he's not the leading expert. What's sad about this is that he knew back then that this was going to be deposited up in this Pacific mountain chain here and hit the Rockies. And I've talked about how the snow accumulates the radiation. So, you know, during the winter months, the snow falling in the Rockies would be slightly radioactive than any other time before, which is what I mentioned in Dutch Sense when he made that video on the finding the radiation in his St. Louis snow. I said, Dutch, it's normal, the snow accumulates it. I don't think he said that, but I did send him an email. Regardless, this is not about Dutch, this is about the topsoil that many of you were saying, no, it's not going to happen here. And this is where I pointed out that Arnie Gunderson telling people to wash their shoes and leave them at the door and wash their vegetables was absolutely nonsense, especially when he was dealing with hot particles. But he does say a sprinkle of truth, and he says, you know, it's going to ultimately get in very low concentrations in our food. I don't know about the very low, because it's very low in the beginning, but if you've been watching my videos here, especially there's a series I put out here with maps showing the deposition maps and the expected plume, how it's going to bioaccumulate on our west coast and stick around for 30 years. I think eventually it'll be a little bit more than very low. But then he goes on to say not true in the Cascades, and that's important, folks, because it was the first time here, let me zoom this in, it was the first time we got a real good sprinkle of truth of what I've been talked about. Now, in my past video, I've talked about when I left Vancouver Island. I live right here in the city of Victoria. When I left Vancouver here, took the ferry and went across Canada, you may recall in my videos I started picking up high levels of radiation in the rain here in this area in Hope, BC. I talked about how I contacted a blackberry picker, how I was doing a test on the side of the road and found how high levels there, went over and spoke to him, showed him my Geiger counter on my way back from my cross Canada radiation tour. Turns out the guy had his farm up for sale. Yeah, I think he may have looked into it. Now, he had reason to, because we found out later on here, and I've looked for this map, by the way, on e-news, not this specific one, but another one. It was another one that showed where there was a whole bunch of little red dots, okay? And it showed you where all these soil samples had been taken. I can no longer find that map. But I do know that at least we have the one story here that comes out where he does talk about how the radiation got caught up in the mountains here in the Cascade Mountain chain. This is the one that he's specifically talking about. Now, the latest story here, you know, it's not surprising here. I've talked about this, how we presently have, they're admitted here, TEPCO, there's a 70 million becquerels spewing out every single hour. That's right, for the last 3 years, minimum 70 million becquerels every hour. The initial massive explosion here, which is what you're looking at here, the plume that traveled across here, I was talking how this is going to come in the jet stream, and we're all going to get dosed on, you know, it's all going to hit us, especially those of us on the west coast. I was very concerned about this. I've mentioned before, I got children. I got a 10-year-old daughter. I was very concerned. I still am about that. You know, it hasn't gone away. What's very concerning about this is that this recent story here, now let me go up to the top here and see it. So it's posted March 12, 2014, and it says, a bit of Fukushima radiation found on a Northwest River beach sparks new mystery. No mystery here, folks. Let's connect the dots and figure this out. We know that it hit the mountain chain, right? The Cascade Mountain chain. Now, this talks about the Fraser River Valley in British Columbia. Okay, there's nothing to be mystified. It's easy to figure out here. Here's the Fraser River, right? Folks that were following me here in 2011, you may remember after I did that cross Canada radiation tour, I decided to go back across here and do a little bit of gold exploring, and that's where I rolled my truck, was up in the Fraser Mountains, and broke my neck 3 times in the C6, C5, C4. Regardless, there's definitely a reason to believe and to suspect that if these folks have only done, and that's what the big thing about this is, that he goes on to say here, We have not seen any other cesium 134, but we've only tested 5 samples. 5 samples. They've only tested 5 samples, and they've already found one of them that had the cesium 134, which is an indicator that it's from the Fukushima nuclear plant. So they've taken 5 soil samples at this one beach, Kilby Provincial Park. Okay, and this is from the Simon Fraser University, so you know it's not hocus pocus, some regular guy, which is all I've been accused, your readings are not right because you're blah 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 blah. Okay, we have the Simon Fraser University now that's gone out there, and they've only tested 5, and they've already found one. Folks, can you not see that there's a reason to be concerned that this is definitely in this mountain chain and definitely will be working its way down to all of our little streams and into your garden, and hopefully not onto your table? And this is the reason why I wanted to talk about this story here, how they're bringing out the new detectors. People are allowed to go here. As I mentioned, there's 126,000 tests that have been done. You know, why can't we have our food tested? Why is it that I have to make a video begging you to go send a request into my local government, for my government here, in my Canadian government, to start testing my food? I can't believe it's such a ridiculous routine I have to go through here, folks. But like as I said, I'll leave a link down below, and hopefully you'll send in a request here, and let's deal with this reality that we have radiation on our west coast, and any of us living on this coastline will be affected because many of us the water feeds our gardens. We drink the water. I talked about here on Vancouver Island, there's a reservoir where the water that many of us in the city drinks. So I contacted Czech News and I begged them, please, can you do a story here on the fact that the Fukushima radiation is crossing the jet stream and maybe falling out in rainouts into our water reservoir. And I'd mentioned how instead of replying yes or no, the person on the telephone from Czech News said, do you believe in chemtrails? Yeah. It's sad here, folks. They're trying to sidetrack the movement here, and the truth movement that is, and don't get sidetracked. It's here, and hopefully you'll take your time and you'll send in a request. Take care, folks. That's it for this video.